You wake up in the middle of the night because your room is too cold. Without thinking, you pull the blanket closer. Maybe you turn up the heat. Maybe you check your phone, see the time, and remind yourself that morning is only a few hours away. Now imagine all of that disappears. No heater, no walls, no soft bed, no glass window between you and the wind. Outside, the world is locked in ice. The air is so cold that every breath feels sharp in your chest. The ground beneath you is frozen solid. Somewhere in the darkness, animals larger than anything you have ever seen are moving across the snow. And you are not watching this from a museum. You were born here. This is your world. If you had been born during the Ice Age, survival would not begin when you became an adult. It would begin the moment you took your first breath. Because in this world, warmth is not comfort. Warmth is life. Food is not a choice. Food is a race against time. And the people around you are not just your family. They are the only reason you have any chance of seeing another sunrise. But here is the surprising part. Your Ice Age ancestors were not helpless primitives hiding from nature. They were inventors, trackers, storytellers, engineers of survival. And many of the things keeping you alive today began with the problems they had to solve thousands of generations ago. But before you imagine yourself wrapped in furs, chasing mammoths across endless snowfields, there is something important you need to know. Most of what you think about the Ice Age is probably wrong. When people hear the words Ice Age, they often picture a frozen planet where humans spent their lives hiding inside caves while glaciers covered everything in sight. It is an image that appears in movies, cartoons, and even school textbooks. And at first glance, it seems to make sense. After all, if the world was colder, wouldn't everyone simply retreat into caves and wait for better weather? But archaeology tells a very different story. In fact, many Ice Age people rarely lived in caves at all. Some built shelters from wood. Others constructed surprisingly sophisticated homes from animal hides stretched over frames. In parts of Eastern Europe, entire dwellings were built using the bones of mammoths, not because they were primitive, because they were practical. A cave might offer protection, but it also came with problems. It could be damp, dark, difficult to heat, and sometimes already occupied by other animals. Your ancestors were not passive survivors hiding from nature. They were active problem solvers constantly reshaping their environment. And that changes the way you should think about them. Because once you stop seeing Ice Age humans as desperate cave dwellers, a much more interesting question appears. How did a relatively fragile species with no claws, no thick fur, no enormous teeth, and no natural protection against extreme cold manage to survive one of the harshest climates our species has ever faced? After all, if you were dropped into that world today, wearing nothing but the clothes on your back, your biggest problem would not be finding a mammoth. It would be surviving the next few nights. And that was exactly the challenge your ancestors had to solve. Not once, but every single day of their lives. Because the greatest enemy of the Ice Age was not a predator. It was the cold itself. And that cold threatened almost everything a human body needs to stay alive. Think about what happens when you step outside on a freezing winter morning. Within minutes, your fingers become stiff. Your nose starts to sting. Your body instinctively searches for warmth. Now imagine there is no warm house waiting behind you. No car. No hot shower. No thick insulated jacket designed in a modern factory. Just wind, ice, and an endless landscape stretching toward the horizon. For Ice Age humans, cold was not an inconvenience. It was a constant biological threat. The human body is remarkably adaptable, but it has limits. Your internal temperature must stay within a very narrow range. Even a small drop can reduce coordination, cloud judgment, and drain energy. If that process continues long enough, survival becomes increasingly difficult. And the problem didn't stop there. Because cold creates another enemy: hunger. Every movement costs energy. Every step through snow burns calories. Every shiver is your body spending precious fuel just to stay warm. In warmer climates, missing a meal is unpleasant. In the Ice Age, missing several meals could become dangerous very quickly. That meant your ancestors faced a brutal equation every single day. To find food, they had to leave shelter. But leaving shelter exposed them to the cold. The more energy they spent searching for food, the more food they needed to replace that energy. It was a cycle that never truly ended. And there was another challenge that is easy to overlook today: darkness. During parts of the Ice Age, winter days could feel incredibly short. Hours of precious daylight disappeared before hunting, gathering, repairing tools, and preparing food were finished. Every sunset created a deadline. If essential tasks were not completed before darkness arrived, they became far more difficult and far more risky. But perhaps the greatest challenge was uncertainty. You never knew exactly where the next herd would appear. You never knew whether tomorrow's weather would be manageable or brutal. You never knew whether a successful hunt was waiting beyond the next hill or whether your group would spend days searching without success. Modern life trains you to expect predictability. The Ice Age offered almost none. And yet, despite all of these obstacles, your species did something extraordinary. Humans did not simply survive this frozen world. They expanded across it. They explored it. They adapted to it. Which raises an even more fascinating question. How did a species that evolved in much warmer environments manage to thrive in a land of snow, ice, and relentless cold? The answer was not strength. It was not speed. And it certainly was not thick fur. Instead, your ancestors developed a collection of ingenious solutions that transformed one of the harshest environments on Earth into a place where human life could continue. And the first of those solutions may have been the most important survival technology ever created. That first technology was not a spear. It was not a shelter. And it was not clothing. It was fire. Today, fire feels ordinary. You press a button, turn a knob, and heat appears almost instantly. But for your Ice Age ancestors, fire was nothing less than a survival machine. Imagine waking up before dawn. The air is below freezing. Your hands ache from the cold. The world outside is silent except for the wind moving across the frozen landscape. Then someone adds wood to the fire. Suddenly, everything changes. The darkness retreats. The air becomes warmer. Food can be cooked. Tools can be repaired. Children can sleep through the night. A small circle of warmth appears in an otherwise hostile world. But keeping a fire alive was not easy. A storm could extinguish it. Wet wood could weaken it. A group forced to migrate might need to transport embers for days before finding new fuel. Losing fire could mean losing your greatest advantage over the environment. And yet, fire provided something even more valuable than warmth. It gave humans time. Time to talk. Time to teach. Time to plan. Time to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. Many researchers believe that countless stories, traditions, and survival skills were shared around fires just like these. But that was only the beginning. Because warmth alone could not solve the Ice Age. You still had to carry that warmth with you. And that led to the next great innovation: clothing. Today, you can walk into a store and choose from hundreds of jackets. Your ancestors had no such luxury. Every piece of clothing had to be created by hand. Animal hides had to be cleaned, scraped, prepared, stitched together using bone needles and animal sinew. At first, that may not sound impressive, until you realize that a poorly made garment could allow precious body heat to escape for hours. A well-made one could mean the difference between comfort and suffering. Some archaeological discoveries suggest that Ice Age humans developed surprisingly sophisticated clothing systems. Not just a single layer, multiple layers. Much like the winter clothing many people still use today. And here is the fascinating part. When you zip up a winter coat, you are using the same basic principle your ancestors discovered tens of thousands of years ago. Trap warm air close to the body. Protect yourself from wind. Preserve energy. The technology has changed. The idea has not. But even the best clothing had limits. Sooner or later, every human must sleep. And sleeping in an Ice Age landscape created a new challenge. How do you stay alive when you are unconscious? The answer was shelter. Many people imagine Ice Age humans spending their lives inside caves. But evidence suggests something much more creative. In regions where caves were unavailable, people built homes. Some used wood and animal hides. Others constructed circular dwellings using mammoth bones as structural frames. Imagine looking across a frozen plain and seeing an entire settlement standing where most modern people assume nothing could survive. These structures trapped heat, blocked wind, created places where families could gather safely. For the first time, humans were not merely adapting to nature, they were redesigning it. But there was still one problem that no shelter could solve: food. Every fire required fuel, every body required calories, and every winter demanded enormous amounts of energy, which meant survival depended on something even more important than warmth: finding enough food to keep everyone alive. And the way your ancestors solved that challenge may have been their most remarkable achievement of all. That achievement was not built on stronger muscles. It was built on cooperation. Imagine standing on an Ice Age plain. In the distance, a herd of reindeer is moving across the landscape, or perhaps a group of wild horses, maybe even a mammoth weighing several tons. You cannot outrun them. You cannot overpower them alone. And you certainly cannot afford to waste energy on a failed attempt. So how do you feed an entire community? The answer is something humans are still exceptionally good at today: working together. Long before cities existed, long before agriculture, long before written language, human beings had already become masters of cooperation. A successful hunt was rarely the work of one person. It required scouts, trackers, tool makers, experienced hunters, people waiting at camp to process food and care for children. Everyone played a role. In a way, an Ice Age hunting party looked less like a group of warriors and more like a small organization. Every individual depended on everyone else, and that created a powerful advantage. Because while humans lacked claws and fangs, they possessed something many animals did not: the ability to share information. Imagine finding a fresh set of tracks in the snow. A single hunter might notice them, but an entire group could analyze them. How old are they? Which direction is the herd moving? How many animals are there? Where are they likely to go next? Every observation increased the group's chances of success, and every successful hunt increased the chances that children would survive another winter. But this raises another fascinating question. How did people remember all of this information? There were no maps, no notebooks, no phones, no GPS. Yet Ice Age humans often traveled across enormous territories. Some groups likely followed seasonal migration routes stretching hundreds of kilometers. To do that, they needed extraordinary memory. They had to remember rivers, shelters, animal behavior, dangerous areas, useful plants, weather patterns, and they passed this knowledge from generation to generation, not through books, through stories. A story told around a fire might sound simple, but hidden inside it could be survival information accumulated over centuries: which valley flooded in spring, which route remained safe during winter, which animals appeared during specific seasons. Knowledge became one of humanity's most valuable resources, and unlike food, it could be shared without being consumed. But there was another tool that made all of this possible: language. Today, conversation feels effortless. You send a text, make a phone call, leave a voice message. For your ancestors, language may have been one of the most powerful technologies ever developed. The ability to describe a distant location, warn others about danger, coordinate a hunt, teach a child, or explain an idea that existed only in the mind. These abilities transformed small groups of humans into highly adaptive communities. And once humans could share knowledge efficiently, something remarkable began to happen. Each generation no longer had to start from scratch. Every child inherited thousands of years of accumulated experience: a better hunting technique, a more effective shelter design, a safer migration route, a more reliable way to make clothing. Knowledge began to evolve almost as quickly as people themselves. And that may be the real reason humans survived the Ice Age. Not because they were the strongest animals, but because they became the best learners, the best teachers, and the best collaborators. Yet even that is not the most surprising part of the story, because many of the systems that helped your ancestors survive the Ice Age are still shaping your life today. You may no longer hunt mammoths. You may no longer sleep beneath animal hides. But the instincts that carried your species through that frozen world never truly disappeared. In fact, traces of the Ice Age are everywhere around you. The home you return to after a long day, the warm clothes hanging in your closet, the food stored in your kitchen, the stories you share with friends and family. Even the device you are watching this video on, all of them are part of the same story, the story of humans solving problems together. Think about it. When your ancestors gathered around a fire, they exchanged information that helped the group survive. Today, billions of people do something remarkably similar. The technology has changed. The distance has changed. But the instinct remains the same: to learn, to share, to cooperate, to pass knowledge forward. And perhaps that is the most important lesson hidden inside the Ice Age. Humanity did not conquer nature. Humanity learned how to adapt to generation after generation, problem after problem, winter after winter. Every shelter was built by people who refused to give up. Every tool was improved by someone who discovered a better way. Every child who survived inherited the knowledge of countless individuals who came before. When you look back at the Ice Age, it is tempting to see a world that feels impossibly distant. A world of mammoths, snow-covered plains, ancient hunters. But the truth is far more personal. Those people were not strangers. They were your ancestors. They laughed. They worried. They protected their families. They planned for tomorrow. And despite living in conditions far harsher than most of us will ever experience, they found ways to survive. Because of them, you are here. Because of them, every generation that followed had another chance. And maybe that changes the way we should think about human history. Not as a timeline of inventions, not as a list of dates, but as an unbroken chain of people helping the next generation make it through another day. The warmth you feel in winter, the roof above your head, the knowledge you carry. None of it appeared out of nowhere. It is the result of thousands of generations solving the same fundamental problem. How do we stay alive long enough to build a better future? The people of the Ice Age never knew your name. They could never have imagined the modern world. But in a very real sense, they built it anyway. And perhaps the next time you step into a warm house on a cold day, you will remember something easy to forget. You did not invent that comfort. You inherited it from people who faced the ice and survived. If you enjoyed this journey into humanity's distant past, don't forget to subscribe and join us for the next story hidden in the lives of our ancestors. Because the more we learn about them, the more we discover about ourselves. The people of the Ice Age never knew your name. They could never have imagined the world you live in today. Yet every shelter they built, every lesson they taught, and every challenge they overcame helped make your existence possible. And perhaps that's the most fascinating part of human history. The farther we look into the past, the more we understand who we are. If you enjoy exploring the hidden stories of human evolution, ancient civilizations, psychology, and the remarkable journey that shaped our species, make sure to subscribe to Duck Psychology. Because every week, we'll travel thousands of years into the past to uncover the secrets, struggles, and discoveries that made us human. Until next time, stay curious. Because the greatest story ever told is the story of us.